Welcome to Sleepless in the Wild, where the world slows down and the wilderness opens up. Tonight, we're going to drift through the quiet centuries of history and follow the story of the Christmas tree, from ancient forests into the warmth of family homes we know today. So let's get comfortable. Whether you're nestled under warm blankets, sitting in your favorite chair by the glow of your own Christmas tree, or simply settling in for the evening, take a deep breath. Let your shoulders drop. We're going to explore something that feels so familiar, so woven into the fabric of our holiday traditions, that we rarely stop to wonder where it all began. The Christmas tree, an evergreen centerpiece that transforms our homes each winter, filling them with the scent of pine and the twinkle of lights. But have you ever wondered why we do this? Why do we bring a tree indoors, decorate it with such care, and gather around it year after year? We'll travel back through centuries, from ancient forests and medieval town squares, to the moment a queen made the Christmas tree fashionable across the world. Arriving in the heart of New York City at Rockefeller Center, as a single tree quietly became a symbol of resilience, while a small, overlooked tree, made famous by Charlie Brown, reminded us that Christmas was never meant to be perfect. We'll discover the merchants who danced around burning trees, the reformer who first added candlelight to branches, and the humble beginnings of an industry that now fills millions of homes each December. But we're in no hurry. This is a story that unfolds slowly, like the gradual growth of a tree itself. Ring by ring, year by year, century by century. Let yourself relax. And as you listen, allow your mind to wander through snowy forests, candle-lit medieval halls, and Victorian parlors. By the end of our time together, you'll know the Christmas tree in a way you never have before. Let's warm up together, shall we? Think of this as settling in by the fireplace with a cup of something warm and wonderful, maybe spiced cider, or rich hot chocolate, or creamy eggnog with just a hint of nutmeg on top. We're going to ease into our journey with some delightful facts about Christmas trees. First, we'll explore a few important culture moments. The trees that made headlines, sparked controversies, and captured our imaginations in movies, music, and modern life. And then we'll peek at some historical tidbits, little appetizers that hint at the magnificent feast of history we're about to enjoy together. Let's begin with some fascinating facts about the Christmas tree you never knew you needed to know. Picture this. It's 1965. Aluminum Christmas trees are everywhere. Shimmering silver trees, golden trees, even pink ones. They're the height of mid-century modern style. Families across America are setting up these futuristic metallic wonders in their living rooms, often with rotating color wheels casting red, blue, and green lights across the metallic branches. The aluminum specialty company can barely keep up with demand. And then, on December 9th, 1965, something remarkable happened. A little television special aired. You probably know it well. A Charlie Brown Christmas. And in that special, Charlie Brown faces a choice. He's surrounded by those flashy, modern aluminum trees. Everyone wants him to pick one. But instead, Our friend Charlie Brown chooses a small, scraggly real pine tree, a tree that everyone else thinks is pathetic. And through Linus's gentle words about the true meaning of Christmas, that sad little tree becomes beautiful. America watched, and something shifted. Almost overnight, the aluminum tree industry collapsed. Sales didn't just decline, they plummeted so dramatically that by 1967, just 2 years later, the aluminum specialty company stopped production entirely. A cartoon special, 25 minutes long, had single-handedly destroyed an entire industry. It's one of the most remarkable examples of how pop culture can shape our traditions, our tastes, and even our economy. Today, those vintage aluminum trees that once sold for a few dollars are collector's items, sometimes worth hundreds. But Charlie Brown reminded us, sometimes simple and real is what our hearts truly want. Now, let's travel to New York City, to one of the most famous Christmas trees in the world. If you've ever seen the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree, you know it's magnificent. But have you ever really looked at the star on top? That star, designed by the famous architect Daniel Libeskind, is extraordinary. It's made of 3 million Swarovski crystals. It has 70 spikes radiating outward like frozen rays of light, and it weighs 900 pounds. 900 pounds of crystalline glory sitting atop that Norway spruce. If you wanted to own it, you'd need well over $1.5 million. Some estimates put the value of the entire tree's decoration package much, much higher. It's not just a tree topper. It's a work of art, a feat of engineering, a symbol that glitters above one of the busiest places on Earth. Every year, millions of people from around the world come to stand before that tree. They look up at that star. They take photos. They make wishes. And for a moment, in the middle of Manhattan's rush and noise, they feel that particular magic that only Christmas can bring. That star reminds us that sometimes we reach for extravagance, for beauty so grand it takes our breath away. But what happens when we flip that beauty, quite literally upside down? Let's explore a trend that's both ancient and thoroughly modern. Now here's something you might have seen on social media in recent years. The upside-down Christmas tree. In 2018, Ariana Grande posted a photo of her Christmas tree suspended from her ceiling, hanging completely upside down. It was playful, it was unexpected, and it went viral almost immediately. Soon, everyone was talking about upside-down trees. Retailers started selling them, pre-made, ready to hang, some costing hundreds of dollars. It seemed so modern, so perfectly suited to our Instagram age. But here's the beautiful thing. This wasn't new at all. In Central Europe, centuries ago, people hung Christmas trees upside down for deeply spiritual reasons. Some say it symbolized the Holy Trinity. Others say it represented the crucifixion. The tree became a sacred symbol, pointing downward toward earth, bringing heaven's blessing to the home. Fashion and tradition dancing together across the centuries, from the avant-garde to the absurd. Let's visit one of America's most beloved Christmas movie moments, If you've watched National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and let's be honest, it's not really Christmas until you have. You remember that tree. The tree. The one Clark Griswold digs up from the snowy wilderness, hauls home on top of the family truckster, and then discovers is about 3 times too large for his living room. That tree in the movie was a 20-foot Douglas fir. But here's the thing. Finding a tree that full, that wide, that perfectly, comically dense in the wild, nearly impossible. Nature doesn't make trees quite like that. So the film crew had to cheat. They strapped extra branches onto the tree using steel rods, building out the width and fullness until it looked absurdly perfect. They engineered the comedy. And it worked. That scene, when Clark finally gets the tree standing and it fills every inch of space, is iconic. We laugh because we've all had our own Christmas tree struggles. The one that looked perfect at the lot, but won't fit through the door. The one that seemed symmetrical until you got it home. The one that leans just slightly to the left no matter what you do. Clark Griswold's tree is all of our trees, just turned up to 11. And if we're talking about turning things up to 11, well, there's someone we simply must discuss. Mariah Carey doesn't do anything halfway. And when it comes to Christmas trees, she absolutely does not do anything halfway. The woman known as the Queen of Christmas, and rightfully so, given that All I Want for Christmas Is You is basically the official anthem of the season, has multiple trees in her homes. Not just one. Multiple. Massive trees. Often themed in all gold or pure white. Each one stunning. Each one worthy of a magazine cover. Every year, her tree reveals on Instagram have become an event. Millions of followers wait for that moment when Mariah posts her tree, because that's when they know, truly know, that Christmas season has officially begun. Usually this happens right after Halloween. Time is a social construct when you're the Queen of Christmas. There's something joyful about this level of enthusiasm, isn't there? Mariah Carey reminds us that it's okay to be extra. It's okay to love Christmas with your whole heart. Of course, even Mariah's enthusiasm pales in comparison to what happened at a luxury hotel halfway around the world. The most expensive Christmas tree in history wasn't at Rockefeller Center. It wasn't at the White House. It was at the Emirates Palace Hotel in Abu Dhabi. The tree itself? Fairly ordinary. But the decorations? Instead of glass ornaments and tinsel, this tree was adorned with jewelry. Real jewelry. Diamonds, pearls, emeralds, sapphires, hanging from the branches like forbidden fruit in the garden of extreme luxury. The total value, over $11 million. It holds the Guinness World Record. And you have to wonder what it would be like to stand in front of that tree, to see all that wealth glittering in the light, to know that each ornament costs more than most people's homes. It's breathtaking, it's excessive, and it's a reminder that humans have always wanted to make the Christmas tree special, to adorn it with the most precious things we have, whether that's a handmade paper star or a 3-carat diamond. The impulse is the same. We want to honor this tree, We want to make it magnificent. Sometimes, though, magnificence takes unexpected forms, and sometimes those forms spark quite a bit of debate. Christmas decorations at the White House are always a big deal. But in 2018, First Lady Melania Trump's choice for the East Colonnade became one of the most talked about holiday decoration decisions in modern history. She installed 40 blood-red topiary trees lining the hallway. Immediately, memes flooded social media comparing the Crimson Corridor to scenes from The Handmaid's Tale and The Shining. Red rum, people joked. Others found them hauntingly beautiful. Some defended the bold artistic choice. Others couldn't stop making references to dystopian fiction. It remains one of the most controversial modern Christmas decoration moments. And regardless of how you feel about those red trees, you have to admit, they made an impression. People are still talking about them years later. Sometimes a Christmas tree becomes more than decoration. It becomes a statement, a conversation, a cultural moment. Now let's shift from controversy to something much sweeter. A folk tale that explains one of our most beloved tree decorations. If you ever see a spider ornament on someone's Christmas tree, there's a beautiful reason for it. In Eastern European folklore, there's a story called The Legend of the Christmas Spider. A poor widow and her children had nothing. No money. No decorations for their small tree. On Christmas Eve, she went to bed, heartbroken, unable to give her family the beauty of the season. But while they slept, the spiders in the house, feeling compassion for the family, spun webs all over the tree. Intricate, delicate webs, covering every branch. When Christmas morning arrived and the first light touched those webs, they transformed into silver and gold. The tree sparkled. The family woke to find their tree more beautiful than any in the land. And this is said to be the true origin of why we put tinsel on Christmas trees. We're remembering those spiders who showed kindness to a family in need. We're honoring the magic of Christmas morning, when ordinary things become extraordinary. So if you see a spider ornament, don't brush it away. It's a nod to this lovely old tale, a reminder that even the smallest creatures have their place in our stories. From ancient legends to modern movements, the Christmas tree continues to evolve with each generation. Something interesting has been happening in recent years. While older generations still prefer traditional green Christmas trees, real or artificial, younger people, particularly millennials and Gen Z, have been choosing different colors. Black Christmas trees, pink ones, rainbow ones. Trees that would have horrified previous generations have become trendy. Goth Christmas has become a whole aesthetic on TikTok and Pinterest. Black trees decorated with Nightmare Before Christmas ornaments, purple lights, and Gothic elegance. Meanwhile, Barbiecore, pink trees, have exploded in popularity, dripping with hot pink tinsel and matching ornaments. It's not rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's personalization. It's making Christmas feel like yours. The Christmas tree is no longer one size fits all. It's become a canvas for self-expression, a way to celebrate the holiday on your own terms, while still honoring the tradition of having a tree at all. And there's something rather wonderful about that. The Christmas tree adapts. It always has. And now it's adapting to a generation that wants their holidays to look a little different than their parents did. The tree remains. The meaning remains. But the color palette, that's negotiable. And for our final pop culture moment, let's return to where we started. To that famous tree in Rockefeller Center, and a movie that made it legendary for an entire generation. If you grew up in the 1990s, the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree holds a special place in your heart for one very specific reason. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Remember that scene? Kevin McAllister, separated from his family, stands in front of that massive, magnificent tree. The snow is falling. The choir is singing. And then his mother appears. They reunite right there in front of the tree in one of the most emotionally satisfying moments in holiday movie history. That tree is a Norway spruce, the traditional species used at Rockefeller Center. And because of that movie, visiting the tree in person became a bucket list item for an entire generation. It's not just a tree anymore. It's the tree where Kevin found his mom. It's the tree that represents hope and home, and the miracle of Christmas, bringing families back together. Now, let's pause for a moment. Maybe adjust your pillow. Settle in a little deeper, because now we're going to shift gears slightly. We've had our fun with pop culture, with modern trees and celebrities and movies. But now let's peek behind the curtain of history. These next facts are little windows into the past, glimpses of the long journey that brought the Christmas tree to your living room. Don't worry, we'll explore all of these in much greater depth as our journey continues tonight. Long before anyone decorated a Christmas tree, long before Christianity even existed, humans looked at evergreen trees and saw something sacred. Ancient pagans, Romans, Egyptians, Vikings, civilizations across the world and across millennia all held evergreens in special reverence during the darkest part of winter. While other trees lost their leaves and seemed to die, the evergreen remained. Green, alive, unchanged. To our ancestors, this was nothing short of miraculous. In a world where winter could mean death, where food grew scarce, where the cold could kill, where the sun seemed to be abandoning the earth, the evergreen was a promise, a reminder, a symbol that life endures, that spring will return, that death is not the end. They brought evergreen branches into their homes. They decorated them. They honored them in winter festivals. The Christmas tree, in a sense, is ancient, far more ancient than Christmas itself. And when we bring that evergreen into our homes each December, we're participating in something primal, something that connects us to humans who lived thousands of years ago, who also needed hope in the darkness of winter. But how did that pagan symbol become a Christian one? Let's meet a man with an axe and a mission. In the 8th century, there was an English missionary named Boniface. History remembers him as a saint, but in his time, he was something of a radical, traveling through what is now Germany, trying to convert pagans to Christianity. One day, he encountered a sacred oak tree, the Thunder Oak it was called, dedicated to the god Thor. The local people worshipped it, made offerings to it, believed it held divine power. Boniface, according to legend, took an axe and cut it down. You can imagine the scene, the pagans watching in horror, certain that Thor's lightning would strike this man dead for his blasphemy. But nothing happened. The oak fell, and Boniface pointed to a small fir tree growing nearby. "This," he said, "this evergreen, let this represent your new faith." Its evergreen nature represents eternal life through Christ. Whether this story is precisely true or embellished over centuries of retelling, we may never know. But it represents a pivotal moment in the Christmas tree's history. The evergreen, sacred to the pagans, was being baptized, given new meaning, folded into a different tradition. The tree would endure, but its story was changing. Fast forward a few centuries to medieval Europe, where the tree took on yet another meaning, one that would directly shape the tradition we know today. In medieval times, there was a feast day on December 24th that you probably haven't heard of. It was called the Feast of Adam and Eve. On this day, to teach Bible stories to a largely illiterate population, churches and homes would set up paradise trees. These were fir trees decorated with apples, representing the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. The apple, the temptation, the fall, the origin story of humanity's need for redemption. These paradise trees would stand in homes and public squares. Sometimes they'd add wafers to represent the Eucharist, symbolizing salvation. The tree became a teaching tool that common people could understand and remember. Over time, the apples became other decorations. The wafers became cookies, then ornaments. The religious symbolism slowly transformed into something more decorative, more festive. But that medieval paradise tree, that's a direct ancestor of your Christmas tree. That tradition of bringing a tree indoors and hanging things from it, that started right there, in those medieval homes, on the Feast of Adam and Eve. Now, as these traditions were taking root across Europe, two cities in the Baltic region were about to make history, or at least, they both claimed they did. Here's a bit of delightful historical rivalry for you. Both Tallinn, Estonia, and Riga, Latvia, claim to have hosted the first publicly documented Christmas tree celebration. Tallinn says 1441. Riga says 1510. The Riga story is particularly vivid. According to historical records, members of the Merchants Guild decorated a tree in the town square. They danced around it, they celebrated, and then they set it on fire. Yes, they burned it. This wasn't vandalism, it was part of the ritual, likely connected to older pagan traditions of burning offerings, of sending wishes up to the heavens with the smoke, of honoring the year's end with fire and light. Both cities hold their claims proudly. Both have monuments. Both have historical documentation, though neither is ironclad enough to settle the debate once and for all. But here's what we know for certain. In the Baltic region, in the 15th and early 16th centuries, people were putting up decorated evergreen trees in public spaces and celebrating around them. The Christmas tree tradition was taking shape, becoming communal, becoming a festival. And then came a moment of pure magic, or at least a legend of magic that changed everything about how we light our trees. Martin Luther, the German priest and reformer who sparked the Protestant Reformation, is credited with something rather magical. According to legend, he was walking through a forest one winter night in the 16th century. The stars were out, brilliant and clear, and as he walked beneath the evergreen trees, he saw starlight filtering through the branches, twinkling like diamonds caught in the needles. He was so moved by the beauty of it that he wanted to recreate it for his family. So he brought a small evergreen tree into his home, and he placed lighted candles on its branches. Candlelight and evergreen. Starlight brought indoors. Whether this story is literal truth or romantic legend, we can't be entirely sure. But what we do know is that Martin Luther's era, the Reformation period, is when lighted Christmas trees began appearing in German homes. And the image of Luther, the great reformer, adding gentle candlelight to a tree to show his children the beauty of God's creation. It's a powerful one. That tradition of lights on trees, it might have started with him on that starlit night. But the tree's journey wasn't finished yet. In fact, it was about to cross an ocean and find a whole new world. The Christmas tree didn't magically appear in America. It arrived with immigrants, specifically with German immigrants and Hessian soldiers during the Revolutionary War period in the late 18th century. These Germans brought their traditions with them, including the Christmas tree. At first, it was seen as a strange, foreign custom. Other Americans didn't quite know what to make of it. A tree? Inside? With decorations? How peculiar. But it would take a while, decades, actually, before the Christmas tree caught on more broadly in America. It remained largely a German tradition, something ethnic communities did, but not something mainstream Americans embraced. Not yet. That would require something else, someone else, a queen across the ocean, and an illustrated newspaper. Let's cross back over the Atlantic now to a moment that would change Christmas forever, all because of one picture. 1846, London. The Illustrated London News published an illustration that would change Christmas forever. The image showed Queen Victoria, her German-born husband, Prince Albert, and their children gathered around a decorated Christmas tree at Windsor Castle. The tree was on a table covered in ornaments, candles glowing on its branches. The royal family looked happy, domestic, and cozy. That single image, reprinted and distributed across Britain and eventually across the world, made Christmas trees fashionable overnight. If the Queen had a Christmas tree, then everyone wanted a Christmas tree. The tradition exploded. Within a few years, Christmas trees were showing up in middle-class British homes everywhere. And in America, the same illustration was published, though American publishers cleverly removed Victoria's crown and Albert's mustache to make them look less obviously royal and more like a regular family. Americans saw that image and thought, we want that too. The Christmas tree went from a German ethnic tradition to a global phenomenon, all because of one picture of a royal family. Never underestimate the power of a good illustration. And once everyone wanted a Christmas tree, well, someone had to figure out how to sell them one. In 1851, a man named Mark Carr did something no one had done before. He opened the first retail Christmas tree lot in New York City. Before this, if you wanted a Christmas tree, you cut one down yourself, or you didn't have one. There was no such thing as buying a tree. But Carr saw an opportunity. He hauled trees down from the Catskill Mountains, set up shop on the sidewalk, and started selling. And people bought them. The commercial Christmas tree industry was born. By 1901, just 50 years later, the first Christmas tree farm was established in New Jersey, with 25,000 Norway spruce trees planted specifically to be harvested and sold. What started as a folk tradition had become a business. And that business would grow and grow until it became what it is today. Just how big did it become? Let's look at the numbers. They might surprise you. Today, right now, approximately 25 to 30 million real Christmas trees are sold every year in the United States alone. They're grown on nearly 15,000 tree farms spread across all 50 states. Yes, even Hawaii. Even Florida. Christmas tree farming employs about 100,000 people. It's a significant agricultural industry, carefully managed, with trees that take 7 to 10 years to grow to harvest size. These aren't just random trees from the forest. They're cultivated, shaped, pruned, and cared for. Farmers rotate crops, manage soil health, and plan years in advance. That tree in your living room, someone planted it years ago with the specific hope that one day it would bring joy to a family at Christmas. But of course, not everyone wants a real tree. The invention that changed the game entirely. The artificial tree. It started in 19th century Germany, believe it or not. People made Christmas trees out of dyed goose feathers. But the modern artificial tree, the kind most people think of today, emerged in the 1950s, made from PVC plastic. At first, they weren't very convincing, but over the decades they improved. They became more realistic, more convenient, more affordable. Today, about 85% of artificial Christmas trees worldwide are manufactured in China. They're shipped across oceans to end up in homes from Sydney to Sao Paulo to Seattle. Some people love them. No needles to vacuum, no watering, reusable year after year. Others swear by real trees. The scent, the tradition, the authenticity. Both are part of the Christmas tree story now. The tradition continues to evolve, to adapt, to meet people where they are. Chapter 1: The Roots of Winter. And now, we've arrived. We've warmed up together. We've explored the fun facts and the historical teasers. We've dipped our toes into the story. But now it's time to dive deep, to go all the way back to the very beginning, to understand where this tradition truly started, long before Christianity, long before anyone had heard of Christmas at all. Take a deep breath. Let your body sink deeper into comfort. Close your eyes for just a moment if you'd like, or let them rest softly, unfocused, because we're about to travel back in time, back to ancient Rome, back to the Germanic forests, back to a world where winter was terrifying, where the darkness felt like it might never end, where people looked at evergreen trees and saw something miraculous. This is where the Christmas tree's story begins. Not in a church, not in a home, but in the primal human need for hope in the darkest time of the year. Imagine yourself standing in an ancient world, long before Christianity, long before the modern calendar we know today. It's the darkest time of the year. The winter solstice, the sun has been retreating day by day. The nights growing longer and longer, and you wonder, will it ever come back? Will spring return? Or is this darkness the new reality? This is where our story truly begins. Not in a department store or a Victorian parlor, but in the deep, primal fear and hope that ancient humans felt when winter came. And in that darkness, they looked to something that refused to die. Something that stayed green when everything else turned brown and brittle. The evergreen. In ancient Rome, as December approached and the days grew short, the entire city transformed. The courts closed, the schools shut their doors, and for several glorious days, the rigid order of Roman society simply melted away. This was Saturnalia, the festival of Saturn, god of agriculture and time itself. Originally just one day, December 17th, but so beloved, so necessary, that it expanded over the centuries until it lasted nearly a week, ending on December 23rd. Picture the scene: elaborate banquets for all. Gambling permitted openly in the streets. The whole world turned upside down in a carnival atmosphere that celebrated chaos and joy. The poet Statius wrote of sweet pastries scattered like snow, of luxurious foods and wine flowing freely, creating a sensory feast that defied the scarcity and cold of winter. Everyone usually knew their place in Roman society, except during Saturnalia. For these precious days, everyone was equal. Everyone could laugh. Everyone could indulge. But here's what matters for our story. During Saturnalia, Roman houses were adorned with wreaths and garlands of evergreen plants. These weren't just pretty decorations. They carried deep religious meaning. The evergreen, that miraculous plant that refused to turn brown, that stayed green, was a potent symbol. It represented the perseverance of life itself. The promise that death wasn't final, that spring would return. The Romans, with their Saturnalia, decorating with garlands and hanging ornaments on boughs, celebrating the unconquerable sun. The Germanic peoples with their Yule, venerating the sacred forest, using evergreens as protective talismans against the wild hunt and the forces of winter. Both traditions would eventually flow into the river that became Christmas. Both would shape the tree that now stands in your living room. But we're not there yet. Not quite. Because before the Christmas tree could be born, something else had to happen. Christianity had to arrive in these northern forests. And when it did, there would be a confrontation, a moment of transformation. A saint with an axe would stand before a sacred oak, and the world would change. But that's our next chapter. For now, rest in this knowledge. The evergreen has always been sacred to humans. Long before anyone celebrated the birth of Christ, long before there was a Christmas at all, the Christmas tree is ancient. Far more ancient than Christmas. And that's what makes it so beautiful. When you place your tree in your home each December, when you hang your ornaments and plug in your lights, you're participating in something that connects you to Romans celebrating Saturnalia 2,000 years ago, to Vikings sheltering the green of the forest, to countless generations of humans who looked at winter and said, "No, life will return. The green promises it." Let that sink in. The tree you know is built on foundations you're only beginning to discover. And we've only just started our journey. Chapter 2: The Acts of Faith. Now, let's shift in our seats a bit. Maybe pull that blanket a little higher. Because we're about to witness one of the most dramatic moments in the history of the Christmas tree. A moment of confrontation. A moment when an axe came down and everything changed. It's the year 723. We're in Germania, what we now call Germany, in a small area called Geismar, near the village of Fritzlar. The landscape is dense forest, dark and old, and in the center of this forest stands a tree that the local people have worshipped for generations. Not just any tree, an oak, a massive ancient oak called the Thunder Oak. Some knew it as Donar's Oak, named after Donar, Thor, the god of thunder. This tree is sacred, profoundly sacred. It's where the Chatty tribe comes to make offerings, to perform rituals, to connect with their gods. The tree is a living temple, and the god it belongs to is powerful, dangerous, and not to be trifled with. And into this sacred space walks a man with a mission and an axe. His name is Boniface. He grew up in the Christian world of Anglo-Saxon England, became a monk, and eventually felt called to do something ambitious, something dangerous. He wanted to convert the pagans of Germania. The Pope himself commissioned Boniface for this task. Go to the Germanic tribes of Hesse and Thuringia, he was told. Bring them to Christ. Turn them from their old gods to the new faith. It was not an easy assignment. These tribes practiced a polytheistic religion centered on the Aesir gods, Odin, Thor, Freya. These weren't abstract concepts. These were real living presences in their world. Gods who controlled the weather, who brought victory in battle, who decided whether the crops would grow or fail. And Thor, Donar to the Germanic peoples, held a particularly prominent place. God of thunder, God of strength, protector. His symbol was the hammer, and his power was evident every time lightning split the sky. The Thunder Oak was his tree, and to touch it was to invite his wrath. But Boniface wasn't deterred. In fact, he planned something that seems almost reckless in hindsight. He decided to prove once and for all that the pagan gods had no power, that Thor was nothing compared to the Christian God. he would cut down the sacred oak. Picture the scene. It's likely winter, possibly near the solstice, when the tribes would gather for important rituals. The people of the Chatty tribe are assembled near the oak. Historical accounts suggest something grim. They may have been preparing for a sacrifice. The air is tense. The forest is watching. And Boniface approaches the tree with his axe. The crowd must have been horrified. Surely they warned him. Lightning will fall from the sky and end you for this blasphemy. But Boniface raises the axe anyway, and he strikes the tree. The pagans watch, waiting for the inevitable, waiting for the thunder god to defend his sanctuary, waiting for lightning to fork down from the heavens and turn this foolish Christian into ash. Boniface strikes again, and again, and nothing happens. No lightning, no thunder, the sky remains still. But then, according to the historical accounts written by Willibald in the Vita Sancti Bonifaci, a biography of Boniface, something remarkable occurs. A strong gust of wind suddenly blows through the forest, and the enormous oak falls. In some retellings, the tree doesn't just fall. It splits into 4 perfect parts with a single stroke of Boniface's axe, as if God himself reached down and tore the tree apart to prove a point. The thunder oak, sacred for generations, lies on the forest floor. And Thor does nothing. The silence must have been deafening. The absence of divine retribution more powerful than any lightning bolt. The pagans' faith, built on the belief that their gods were real, present, protective, shattered in that moment. If Thor couldn't even defend his own tree, what good was he? The people, according to the historical record, agreed to be baptized. Right there, the old gods abandoned, the new god embraced. One tree fell, and an entire worldview fell with it. Now here's where history blurs into legend, and the beautiful story begins. According to the story that developed over the centuries, when the oak fell, Boniface noticed something. In the roots of that massive pagan tree, a small fir tree was growing, young, green, resilient. And Boniface, always the preacher, always looking for the perfect metaphor, seized upon it. He turned to the newly converted pagans and said something like this: "This little tree, this young child of the forest, shall be your holy tree tonight. It is the wood of peace. It is the sign of an endless life, for its leaves are evergreen. Look at its shape," he told them. The fir tree points upward, toward heaven. Its 3 points represent the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Where the oak was the symbol of blood sacrifice, of Thor's violent power, the fir tree was gentle, peaceful, evergreen, like eternal life through Christ. And then Boniface gave them an instruction that would echo through the centuries. Take this fir tree into your homes, not to the public forest, not to the wild places where you made sacrifices. Take it into your family's dwelling. Make it part of your domestic life. Let it be a place for loving gifts and rites of kindness, not blood and fear. The tree was being baptized, literally and figuratively. What had been a pagan symbol, the sacred grove, The worship of nature, the old gods, was being transformed, given new meaning, recast in Christian terms. This is syncretism at work. This is the church doing what it did so well, not destroying the old traditions entirely, but absorbing them, reshaping them, making them Christian. The people were already bringing evergreens into their homes during winter. They already saw the evergreen as sacred, as meaningful. Boniface didn't tell them to stop. He told them to continue, but to understand it differently now. Whether Boniface actually stood there and gave that speech about the fir tree, we can't know for certain. The story appears in later retellings, in legends, in the collective memory of German Christianity, but the core historical fact remains. Boniface cut down the sacred oak in 723 AD, and in doing so, he helped shift how the Germanic peoples understood trees. The sacred had moved from the wild forest to the family home, from public ritual to private devotion, from sacrifice to gift-giving. The evergreen was no longer the domain of Thor. It belonged to Christ now. And over the centuries that followed, this Christianized tree tradition would take root, forgive the pun, in Germanic culture. Families would bring fir trees into their homes during the Christmas season. They would decorate them. They would gather around them. The oak fell, but the evergreen endured. Changed, yes. Transformed, absolutely. But still there, still green, still sacred. We've just witnessed a pivotal moment, a moment of destruction and creation, a moment when one tradition ended and another began. Boniface's acts changed the course of history. That single act of defiance against the pagan gods and the fact that Thor didn't strike him down convinced an entire tribe that the old ways were finished, that a new faith had arrived, and with it, a new way of understanding the evergreen tree. The Christmas tree, in a sense, was born in that moment, not fully formed, not yet decorated with ornaments and lights. But the seed was planted. The idea was there. The tree could be Christian. The tree could be sacred in a new way. The tree could come inside, and from that seed, everything else would grow. Chapter 3: How the Christmas Tree Began to Glow. On a quiet winter evening in the early 16th century, a man walks home through the forest. The air is cold, crisp enough that his breath rises in pale clouds before him. The ground beneath his feet is firm and frozen. Above, the sky is vast and clear, scattered with countless stars. As he moves beneath the fir trees, something gently slows his steps. Starlight filters through the branches overhead, catching on the needles. Each one seems to hold a tiny point of light, as though the stars themselves have drifted down and come to rest in the trees. For a moment, the forest feels suspended between heaven and earth. The man pauses. His name, according to tradition, is Martin Luther. Moved by what he sees, he carries the image with him home. And there, in the quiet warmth of his house, he brings in a small evergreen tree and places candles among its branches. When they are lit, the tree begins to glow. softly, steadily, like the forest he left behind. Whether this moment happened exactly as the story tells it is uncertain. But what is certain is that Martin Luther became closely linked to the image of a candlelit Christmas tree. And for Protestant families, the meaning was unmistakable. The evergreen spoke of life enduring through winter. The candles spoke of Christ as light entering the darkness. The tree was no longer just decoration. It was teaching. It was reassurance. It was faith made visible, quietly shining in the night. As the Reformation spread, so did this gentle symbol. And by the early 1500s, the Christmas tree had moved beyond legend and into everyday life. In the region of Alsace, nestled between modern France and Germany, written records begin to appear. In 1531, Christmas trees were being harvested in such numbers that local authorities imposed limits, 1 tree per household. A small detail, perhaps, but a revealing one. The tree was no longer rare. It was familiar, expected. By 1605, a visitor to Strasbourg described fir trees standing in family parlors, decorated with apples, paper roses, wafers, gold foil, and sweets. Apples recalled the Garden of Eden. Wafers suggested redemption. Sweets delighted children waiting patiently for Christmas morning. The tree had become both sacred and joyful, serious and playful, a place where meaning and delight met, right in the center of the home. And then, in 1611, light returned to the story once more. A noblewoman, Duchess Dorothea Sibyl of Silesia, is recorded as decorating a Christmas tree with candles. This is the first confirmed candlelit tree in history. What had lived in legend was now documented, practiced, real. For generations, the tradition remained mostly within German-speaking Protestant Europe, familiar, beloved, but still regional, until royalty took notice. In 1800, Queen Charlotte, herself born in Germany, placed a Christmas tree at Windsor Castle. It was noticed quietly, almost privately. Nearly 50 years later, Queen Victoria and her husband Prince Albert did the same. But this time, something different happened. In 1848, an illustration appeared showing the royal family gathered peacefully around their Christmas tree. Candles glowed, children leaned close. The scene felt warm, intimate, and human. That image traveled far. It carried a message without words. This is what home looks like. And suddenly, families everywhere wanted the same gentle glow. From palaces to parlors, from Britain to America and beyond, the Christmas tree spread, not through decree or doctrine, but through quiet imitation. What began as a forest moment became a household tradition. What started as light caught in branches became light shared across generations. An evergreen holding candles. A family gathered close. A soft glow against the dark of winter. And even now, when we light our trees, we are repeating that same simple act. Letting the light rest. Letting the night be gentle. Letting the season glow. Chapter 4. An Evergreen's American Journey. Now, let's slow down for a moment. Because the Christmas tree did not arrive in America to open arms and warm hearths, it arrived to suspicion, resistance, even laws forbidding the very holiday it represented. In 17th century New England, the Puritans had little patience for Christmas at all. To them, it looked like a leftover from pagan Rome, noisy, indulgent, unbiblical. In 1659, the Massachusetts Bay Colony made celebrating Christmas illegal, punishable by a fine. And even after that law was repealed, the distrust lingered for generations. Christmas would not become a legal holiday in Massachusetts until 1856. So when the Christmas tree entered the American story, it did so quietly, carefully, almost in hiding, because America was never just Puritan. It was also immigrant. German families settled throughout Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio, and the Midwest, bringing their language, customs, and traditions with them, including the Christmas tree. These families, often called the Pennsylvania Dutch, kept the tradition alive in their homes, not as a statement, but as continuity. They decorated trees for their children the way their parents had done for them. They didn't advertise it. They simply practiced it. And slowly, others began to notice. The earliest solid evidence appears in 1821, when a Pennsylvania man named Matthew Zahm casually recorded in his diary that his family went out for Christmas trees. The simplicity of the note tells us everything. This was not new. It was routine. The tradition was already established, just not yet mainstream. That shift began in the most unlikely place, Cambridge, Massachusetts. In 1832, a German professor at Harvard named Charles Follen decorated a Christmas tree for his young son. An English writer, Harriet Martineau, happened to witness it and later wrote about the glowing candles, the children's delight, the quiet magic of the scene. Her words traveled. For the first time, the Christmas tree appeared to New England not as a threat, but as something refined, intellectual, European, beautiful. Then, in 1836, Americans saw a Christmas tree. A book called The Stranger's Gift was published with an illustration showing a mother and children gathered around a tabletop tree. This mattered. Images have a way of making unfamiliar ideas feel real, familiar, possible. Across the country, the Christmas tree took root town by town, family by family. In Ohio, a German immigrant named August Imgard decorated a spruce tree in 1847, a moment later remembered as local folklore. Not the first, but proof that the tradition was spreading. Still, what the tree needed was legitimacy. It needed the White House. There are claims that President Franklin Pierce may have had an early Christmas tree in the 1850s, but the evidence is uncertain. What is certain is that in 1889, President Benjamin Harrison set up a documented Christmas tree in the White House, decorated with candles, toys, and glass ornaments. The newspapers reported it. Americans noticed. If the president had a Christmas tree, then the Christmas tree was no longer foreign. It was American. Just a few years later, the tree would change forever. Candles were beautiful, but dangerous. Fires were common. Trees dried quickly. Families watched flames nervously, buckets of water close at hand. And then came electricity. In 1882, Edward H. Johnson, a close associate of Thomas Edison, unveiled the world's first electrically lit Christmas tree. 80 colored bulbs, red, white, and blue, wired by hand. The tree rotated slowly, powered by a generator glowing and moving like nothing anyone had ever seen. It was breathtaking. It was also impractical for most Americans. Electricity was rare. Lights were expensive. But the idea had been born. By 1895, President Grover Cleveland's White House tree was lit with electric lights, symbolizing progress, safety, and the future. The Christmas tree was no longer just tradition. It was innovation. By the turn of the 20th century, the transformation was complete. The Christmas tree in America had survived suspicion, crossed cultures, gained presidential approval, and embraced technology. It honored its old world roots while becoming something new, brighter, safer, and distinctly American. An ancient evergreen, glowing now with modern light. And with that, the Christmas tree had truly found its home. Chapter 5: The Golden Age of Ornaments. If you've drifted off by now, I hope your dreams are filled with soft lights, evergreen branches, and the quiet warmth of Christmas. This next part of our journey is going to be rich, detailed, luxurious. We're going to explore something beautiful: the transformation of the Christmas tree from a decorated evergreen into something that sparkles, that glitters, that catches the light in 1,000 different ways. We're going to talk about ornaments. Those fragile, precious things that turn a tree into something magical. And this story begins with skepticism, with doubt, with a man who thought glass ornaments were completely useless. His name was Frank Winfield Woolworth, and in 1880, he was about to make a mistake that would change Christmas forever. Picture Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in the autumn of 1880. It's a working-class town, practical, no nonsense. People work hard for their money, and they spend it carefully. Every penny has to justify its existence. And in this town, there's a small shop called the Great 5C Store. It's Frank Woolworth's store. He's 28 years old, ambitious, determined to build something successful. His concept is simple, but revolutionary. Everything in the store costs a nickel. 5 cents. Affordable. Accessible. No haggling. No negotiating. The price is the price. One day, a traveling salesman walks through the door. He's representing a German importer, and he's carrying samples of something from a village called Lauscha in the Thuringian forest of Germany. Glass ornaments. Delicate, hollow, silvered on the inside. Shaped like balls, like fruit, like little treasures meant to hang on Christmas trees. The salesman spreads them out on Woolworth's counter. They catch the light. They shimmer. They're beautiful. And Woolworth looks at them and says no. Useless, he tells the salesman. "These glass balls don't do anything. They don't serve any practical purpose. They're just decoration, frivolity." His customers, Woolworth insists, would never waste money on something so impractical, something that doesn't do anything, something that could shatter the moment you touch it. In Woolworth's mind, he knows his market: working-class Americans, frugal people, people who need to justify every purchase. A glass ball that serves no function other than looking pretty? That's a terrible investment. The salesman is desperate. He needs to break into the American market, so he makes an offer that Woolworth can't refuse. Take them on consignment. Sale or return terms. If they don't sell, bring them back. You risk nothing. Just give them a chance. Woolworth thinks about it. Zero risk. Why not? He agrees to take one case, 144 ornaments. He'll display them and see what happens. He expects nothing. The ornaments go on display in Woolworth's shop, and within 1 hour, one single hour, all 144 ornaments are gone. Sold. Every single one. Woolworth stands there, stunned. He had completely misjudged his customers. They weren't looking for utility. They were hungry for beauty, for a touch of European elegance that they could afford, for something that made their homes special, magical, festive. For a nickel, an ordinary working-class family could own something that sparkled, something that transformed their Christmas tree from a simple evergreen into something extraordinary. The profit on that first case was modest, but the implication was staggering. Woolworth immediately ordered more, lots more. He had discovered something powerful. People will pay for beauty. People want to make their holidays special. And at 5 cents per ornament, even modest families could afford to have a tree that glittered like the ones in wealthy homes. That moment in Lancaster, Pennsylvania in 1880 was the beginning of what historians now call the Golden Age of Ornaments. And it would last for nearly 60 years. Let's travel now, in our minds, to the place where these ornaments came from, to a small village in the mountains of Germany, a place that would become known as the Christmas capital of the world, Lauscha. If you were to visit Lauscha in the 19th century, you'd find a village nestled in the Thuringian forest, dense woods all around, mountains, streams, and in this village, an entire economy built on one material: glass. The location of Lauscha wasn't accidental. Geography determined its destiny. The mountains provided quartz sand and lime, the fundamental ingredients for making glass. The forests provided endless timber for fuel. Everything needed for glass making was right there, provided by nature. The first glassworks in the region was established way back in 1597 by two men, Christoph Müller and Hans Greiner. And for the next 2 centuries, the families who settled there, the Greiners and the Müllers, intermarried, had children, passed down their skills through generations. Trade secrets stayed within the bloodlines. For a long time, they made practical things: apothecary bottles, drinking vessels, glass beads, utilitarian glass for utilitarian purposes. But then something changed. they started making glass eyes for taxidermy, for dolls. This required incredible skill. Blowing a hollow glass sphere, shaping it, painting it to look lifelike. And once you can make a glass eye, you can make a Christmas ornament. The skills are the same. The glass is the same. Only the purpose is different. The earliest true Christmas ornaments from Lauscha were called Kugels, German word for ball. These appeared as early as the 1820s, but they weren't like the delicate ornaments we know today. Kugels were heavy, thick-walled, often lined with lead or zinc to create a dull metallic shine. They were robust, sturdy, meant to last. And they weren't just for Christmas. People hung Kugels in their windows year-round as friendship balls or symbols of good fortune. They were supposed to reflect negativity, to brighten dark rooms, to bring luck. The Kugel established the basic form, the hollow glass sphere, but it was too heavy for tree branches. It would bend them, break them. It wasn't quite right for what would come next. For the ornament industry to truly take off, 3 things had to happen. 3 technological breakthroughs that would transform glassmaking in Lauscha. First, gas. In 1867, the village of Lauscha built a municipal gas works. This might not sound revolutionary, but it was. Before this, glass blowers used oil lamps for heat. Oil lamps were smoky, inconsistent, hard to control. But gas? Gas was clean. Gas was reliable. Gas could be piped directly into homes, into workshops. A network of pipelines connected the entire village. Suddenly, every glass-blowing family had access to a high-energy fuel source right in their own home. This was the foundation of everything that followed. Second, the Bunsen burner. With gas came the adoption of a special type of lamp, what we'd recognize as similar to a Bunsen burner. It mixed gas with air before combustion, creating a clean, intensely hot blue flame. This flame allowed glass blowers, lamp workers they were called, to heat glass with surgical precision. They could stretch glass to paper thinness. They could blow delicate shapes that would have been impossible with the old oil lamps. They could work faster, more efficiently, more intricately. This technology made it possible to create ornaments so light, so thin, that they could hang on the tip of a pine branch without bending it. Bubble-thin glass, fragile as breath. Third, the silver nitrate process. This is where the magic really happened. The chemistry that made the ornaments shine. But in the 1870s, Lauscha craftsmen began experimenting with silver nitrate. Let me describe the process, because it's absolutely fascinating. A marvel of chemistry performed in kitchen sinks by glass-blowing families. First, they'd blow the glass ornament, a hollow ball, a bell, a fruit shape, whatever the design required. Then they'd prepare a solution, silver nitrate mixed with a reducing agent, often sugar water or tartaric acid. They'd inject this solution into the cooled glass shape through the small opening at the top. They'd swirl it around, coating the entire interior surface. Then came the magic part. They dipped the ornament into warm water. The heat triggered a chemical reaction. The silver precipitated out of the solution and bonded instantly to the inside of the glass, creating a brilliant mirror-like finish. This silvering was protected by the glass itself. It couldn't chip or scratch. because it was on the inside. And when they later painted the outside with translucent colored lacquer, reds, greens, golds, the silver layer underneath reflected light back through the color. The ornaments glowed. They didn't just reflect light, they seemed to generate it from within. Especially later, when electric lights became common. The combination of colored glass and internal silvering created that characteristic glow that defines vintage ornaments. It was beautiful, it was ingenious, and it was all done by hand, by families working in their homes. Because that's how the industry worked in Laosha. Not in factories, in homes. Every family became a small production unit. The father, the glass blazer, the glass blower, sat at his lamp in the main room, the stuba. He had the lung power, the skill to manage molten glass. He'd heat the glass tubes, blow them into shapes, either freehand or using ceramic molds. Once the basic glass shape was blown and cooled, the rest of the family took over. The mother and older daughters handled the silvering, carefully injecting the solution, swirling it, dipping the ornaments, hanging them to dry. Then came the detail work. Painting. If it was a Santa ornament, someone had to paint the face, the rosy cheeks, the eyes, the beard. If it was a fruit, someone had to add highlights, shadows, stems, all by hand, all requiring skill and patience and a steady touch. The children helped too. Often they'd be assigned the task of cutting the sharp glass stem, called the pike, with a diamond cutter. Then they'd attach the metal cap and wire loop so the ornament could hang. During peak production times, especially as Woolworth's orders grew larger and larger, families would work for 2 or 3 weeks straight, barely sleeping. The gas lamps raised the temperature in the small, poorly ventilated rooms to blistering levels. Adults and children alike, sweating, working, meeting deadlines for the ships that would carry the ornaments across the Atlantic. It was grueling work. The romantic image of Santa's workshop, happy elves cheerfully crafting toys, that wasn't the reality. This was sweated labor. Families whose economic survival depended on meeting quotas, on keeping the American buyer happy. But they were incredibly skilled. And they produced ornaments of stunning beauty and variety. Now let's return to Frank Woolworth, because that first successful case in 1880 was just the beginning. Woolworth realized he had tapped into something huge. The American appetite for these ornaments was insatiable. So he expanded his orders. He brought in more designs. And by 1890, he decided he needed to go directly to the source. He couldn't keep buying through New York importers who added their own markup. If he wanted to maintain the 5-cent price point and still make a profit, he had to cut out the middlemen. So, in 1890, Frank Woolworth and his trusted buyer, a man nicknamed Pop Hunt, set sail for Europe. Their destination? Sonneberg, Germany. The commercial hub, just a few miles from Lauscha, the center of the toy and ornament export trade. When they arrived, Woolworth encountered something called the factor system. Factors were middlemen, agents who would visit the home workshops, buy the weekly output on credit or for low wages, and then sell to exporters at a markup. The glass-blowing families were perpetually in debt to these factors. and the exporters charged high prices to foreign buyers. Woolworth looked at this system and decided to blow it up. His strategy was simple and ruthlessly effective: cash. Woolworth went directly to the workshops. He bypassed the factors entirely, and he offered something revolutionary: immediate cash payment for goods. No credit, no debt, cold, hard American dollars. For glass-blowing families living hand-to-mouth, perpetually owing money to factors, this was extraordinary. Woolworth could negotiate much lower prices because the families would rather have cash in hand. Woolworth didn't speak German. He relied on Pop Hunt and hired interpreters. But he didn't need language to communicate the power of cash. Woolworth wrote home, boasting that he was being pointed out on every corner as the big buyer from America. He had effectively cornered a huge portion of the region's output, and this was only the beginning. Over the next few decades, Woolworth would return to Germany repeatedly. He'd establish a formal German subsidiary. He'd build a massive warehouse in Sonneberg, so large it needed its own train station spur to handle the volume of exports. By 1914, it was estimated that 25% of all goods sold in Woolworth's North American stores were European imports. And the ornaments were the most iconic, most profitable part of that trade. Frank Woolworth had become the primary patron of the Thuringian glass industry. Hundreds of families in Lauscha depended on his orders for their survival. And oh, the variety of what they produced. The creativity. The sheer imagination. In the early years, it was mostly simple silver balls. But as American demand grew, so did the diversity of shapes. The glass blowers used ceramic molds to create recognizable objects, and they made everything, absolutely everything. Natural forms, strawberries, grapes, apples, pears, pine cones, walnuts covered in gold foil. These referenced the old tradition of hanging real fruit on trees, but these versions would last forever and sparkle. Animals. Birds were a Lauscha specialty. They'd blow the glass body and then attach tails made of spun glass, fine, delicate fiberglass filaments that looked like real feathers. Owls, peacocks, songbirds, but also dogs, cats, fish, even squirrels. Characters. Santa Claus faces with rosy cheeks were ubiquitous, but also clowns, storybook characters, even figures from popular comic strips like Foxy Grandpa. Modern objects. This is where it gets really interesting. The glass blowers made ornaments shaped like locomotives, zeppelins, automobiles, even household items like shoes and smoking pipes. They were capturing the modern industrial age in glass. A Woolworth counter in the 1910s or 1920s would have been an absolutely surreal sight, a mix of the traditional and the whimsical, the natural and the futuristic, all in glittering glass, all for a nickel. And then there's the Christmas pickle. We have to talk about the Christmas pickle. You might have heard the legend. It's supposedly an old German tradition where you hide a pickle-shaped glass ornament deep in the tree, and the first child to find it on Christmas morning gets an extra gift or good luck for the coming year. It's a charming story, and it's sold millions of pickle ornaments over the years. There's just one problem. It's almost certainly not a German tradition at all. Surveys in Germany consistently show that over 90% of Germans have never heard of this custom. It doesn't appear in German folklore archives. It's unknown in the very country where it's supposedly from. So where did it come from? The most likely explanation is brilliant retail necessity. The Lausche glassblowers made ornaments in the shape of every fruit and vegetable imaginable, including cucumbers. And cucumbers, being green, were very hard to spot against the green needles of a pine tree. So they weren't selling well. They were accumulating, sitting in inventory. Someone, possibly Woolworth himself, possibly one of his importers, realized they needed to do something with all these green vegetable ornaments that nobody wanted. So they invented a tradition. They created a story about it being a German custom, about finding the pickle bringing good luck. They turned a camouflage problem into a game. And it worked. Brilliantly. The Christmas pickle became popular. People bought them specifically to hide in the tree. A slow-selling item became a bestseller. The Christmas pickle is a perfect example of something fascinating about this era. The Golden Age didn't just manufacture ornaments. It manufactured the culture around them. It created traditions, stories, meanings. It took commercial products and wrapped them in folklore and sentiment. And people loved it. They wanted the stories. They wanted the traditions. Even if those traditions were invented last Tuesday by a sales department in New York. There's something very American about that. Taking something, adding a story, making it meaningful, making it yours. Now, while Lucia was producing the glass, there were American players too. Immigrants who brought European skills and adapted them to American industrial methods. The most important was Bernard Wilmsen, a German immigrant who settled in Philadelphia in the 1880s. Wilmsen started as a tinsel manufacturer. He had hand-operated machines imported from Germany that produced metallic garlands. But he quickly innovated, combining materials in new ways. He patented ornaments that fused metal tinsel with glass bulbs. He introduced honeycomb paper decorations, large bells, and balls that could fold flat for shipping. By 1939, Wilmsen claimed to be Woolworth's oldest supplier. He'd sold over $25 million worth of goods to the chain over the decades. $25 million in 1939 money. That's an enormous amount. Wilmsen shows us that the Golden Age wasn't purely about imports. It was also about immigrant entrepreneurs who brought European craftsmanship and adapted it to American scales of production and distribution. The ornament industry was becoming American even as it remained connected to Germany. We've talked about the birth of an industry, the skill of glassblowers, the genius of Woolworth's distribution system, the incredible variety of ornaments that filled American homes. This golden age, from 1880 to the late 1930s, was a remarkable period. A time when beauty was democratized, when working-class families could have trees that sparkled just as brightly as wealthy ones, when Christmas became a visual spectacular accessible to almost everyone. Today, collectors hunt for those surviving ornaments from the Golden Age. The Woolworth ornaments, the Lausche ornaments, paper thin, silvered, often slightly irregular because they were made by hand. They're fragile. Many have been lost over the decades, dropped, shattered, thrown away when people didn't know their value. But the ones that survive are treasured. They're prized for their delicacy, their individuality, their connection to that brief period when the pre-industrial met the hyper-capitalist and created something beautiful. Each one is unique. Each one was touched by human hands in a cottage in the Thuringian forest. Each one traveled across an ocean to bring a little glitter to an American Christmas. They're artifacts now, museum pieces, reminders of a world that doesn't exist anymore. But the hunger that Frank Woolworth discovered in Lancaster in 1880, that hunger for beauty, for sparkle, for something that makes Christmas special, that hasn't changed. That remains permanent in the American imagination. We still want our trees to shine. We still want ornaments that catch the light. We still want to transform an evergreen into something magical. The method has changed. The source has changed. But the desire, that's still the same. And when you hang an ornament on your tree this year, whether it's a vintage Lauscha treasure or a modern mass-produced bauble, you're participating in a tradition that Frank Woolworth accidentally discovered when he reluctantly agreed to take one case of useless glass balls on consignment. Beauty isn't useless. Beauty matters. Beauty is worth paying for, even if it's fragile, even if it doesn't do anything practical. Sometimes beauty is the whole point. Are you still with us? If you're asleep, well, that's what we're here for. Let this story settle. The golden age of ornaments, the glass blowers of Lauscha, the genius of Woolworth, the transformation from handmade to machine-made. We've traveled from a small shop in Pennsylvania to cottage workshops in Germany and back again. We've watched an industry be born, flourish, and ultimately transform. The story is almost complete now. One more transformation to explore. The final evolution of the Christmas tree into what you know today. But first, rest. Close your eyes if you'd like. Think about ornaments, about light-catching glass, about families working together, about beauty that crossed an ocean. Before we move into our final chapter, let's pause here. Let's linger a bit longer in this world of glass and glitter, because there are some wonderful details about ornaments, little stories, surprises, connections that deserve their moment. Think of these as the finishing touches, the extra sparkle, the things that make you look at your tree just a little differently. So, settle in. Long before they were Christmas decorations, heavy glass spheres were hung in windows in 17th century England and later in America. But these weren't for decoration. They were protection. They were called witch balls or kugels, and people believed they could ward off evil spirits and witches. The theory varied. Some said witches were repulsed by the perfectly round shape. Others believed that a witch would become trapped by her own reflection in the glass, unable to look away, frozen by her vanity. So families hung these heavy glass balls in their windows, hoping to keep malevolent forces at bay. Over time, as belief in witchcraft faded, these witch balls evolved they became lighter, prettier, less about protection and more about decoration. The superstition transformed into aesthetics, and eventually, they became Christmas ornaments. Same basic form, a hollow glass sphere, but with a completely different purpose. From warding off witches to celebrating the holidays. What a journey! Before Woolworth, handmade decorations, popcorn strings, maybe a few precious ornaments if you could afford them. After Woolworth, trees covered in glass, catching the light, transforming living rooms into something magical. One man's reluctant business decision changed Christmas for millions of people. But before there was glass, before there was Woolworth, before there was mass production, tree decorations were edible, almost entirely edible. Think back to those medieval paradise plays we discussed. The tree hung with apples representing the forbidden fruit. That was the beginning. And for centuries, families decorated their trees with things they could eat. Apples, yes, but also wafers, representing the Eucharist. Nuts, often gilded with scraps of gold foil. Dates, sugar cookies cut into shapes and hung with ribbon. The tree was both decoration and dessert. And on Christmas Day, or Twelfth Night, children could take the ornaments down and eat them. It was ephemeral, temporary. Each year, you'd make new decorations, and each year, they'd be consumed. The glass ornaments that Woolworth sold replaced this edible tradition. Those red glass balls? They were simulating apples. They were offering a permanent version of what had always been temporary. But something was lost in that transition. The making, the baking, the handmade quality. We gained permanence and sparkle, but we lost the scent of gingerbread, the taste of marzipan, the joy of crafting ornaments from scratch each year. Both traditions are beautiful. Both have value. And some families today are returning to edible ornaments, reclaiming that older handmade aesthetic. The tree continues to evolve. Here's a detail that collectors love. If you ever find a vintage glass ornament with a cardboard cap instead of a metal one, you're holding a piece of World War II history. Between roughly 1942 and 1945, metal was strictly rationed. Everything metal was needed for the war effort: weapons, vehicles, machinery. There was none to spare for Christmas ornaments. So companies like Shiny Bright had to improvise. They used cardboard tabs and string to attach the ornaments to trees instead of metal caps and wire. These cardboard-capped ornaments are fragile. Many didn't survive, but the ones that did are treasured by collectors. They're a reminder of sacrifice, of making do, of celebrating Christmas even during wartime, even when resources were scarce. Americans bought these ornaments as a patriotic duty. They hung them proudly, knowing that the metal they would have used was instead helping win the war. Christmas continued, but it adapted, as it always has. So here we are, at the end of the ornament story. And what a story it's been. From Hans Greiner's workshop in Lauscha to Woolworth's 5 and dime stores. From witch balls warding off evil to Christmas baubles bringing joy. From handmade edible decorations to mass-produced glass to wartime cardboard caps to mid-century shiny brights. The ornament evolved, adapted, survived wars and economic changes and shifts in taste. It went from craft to commerce, from Europe to America, from the hands of glass-blowing families to the machines of Corning glass. And through it all, the essential magic remained, that desire to make the tree sparkle, to transform the evergreen into something that catches the eye and lifts the heart. Frank Woolworth thought glass ornaments were useless, but he was wrong. They weren't useless at all. They were beautiful. And beauty, it turns out, is one of the most useful things we have. Beauty reminds us that life is worth celebrating, that even in dark winters, we can create light, that even in hard times, we can make something shine. Every ornament on your tree, whether it's a priceless antique from Laosha or a plastic ball from a discount store, carries this history, this journey, this evolution from sacred to commercial to beloved. And when you hang them, one by one, you're participating in something that stretches back nearly 2 centuries. You're part of the golden age, even if that age has transformed into something new. The ornament endures, just like the tree itself. Changed, yes, but still here, still glittering, still magical. Rest now. We're almost at the end of our journey. One more chapter remains, the final transformation, the Christmas tree in the modern world, and what it means to us today. But first, breathe. Close your eyes. Think about ornaments, about light and glass and memory, about traditions that persist and adapt and surprise us. Chapter 6. The Christmas Tree becomes an icon. And now, we arrive at the final stretch of our journey. If you're still awake, let your thoughts rest easily. And if you've drifted off, may your dreams be filled with softly glowing trees, winter windows lit from within, and the quiet magic of Christmas nights. Because this final chapter is special. Like the star on top of the tree, the crowning touch that completes everything we've built together. We've touched on some of these topics already during our journey. The Rockefeller Center tree, the aluminum tree phenomenon, Charlie Brown's small, imperfect pine. These stories have already made brief appearances, little glimpses as we traveled through time. But now, we're going to take these moments and explore them a little more closely. We're going to add the finishing details, the rich textures, and the context that makes them truly shine. Here, we bring everything together. All the threads we've woven, ancient traditions, technological innovations, cultural shifts, moments of resistance and acceptance, they all lead here. To the modern Christmas tree. To the tree as you know it today. So, settle in and let the evening grow quiet. In this final chapter, we'll take our time with a few of the most meaningful Christmas tree moments from the modern world we know today. And when we're done, you'll understand not just where the Christmas tree came from, but what it means, what it has always meant, what it will continue to mean. Our story begins at a time when the Christmas tree became a small but powerful symbol of hope during one of the hardest chapters in modern life, the Great Depression. It's 1931. The stock market crashed 2 years ago, and the American economy is in free fall. Unemployment is staggering. In the building trades, over 60% of workers have no jobs. Families are struggling. People are hungry. The future looks bleak. And in the middle of Manhattan, in a massive construction site that will become Rockefeller Center, workers are building. They're grateful to have jobs when so many don't. They show up every day to this muddy pit, this skeletal framework of steel. It's Christmas Eve, and these workers, these men who are holding on to their livelihoods by a thread, do something extraordinary. They pool their money. Every one of them contributes what little they can spare, and they buy a tree. A 20-foot balsam fir. Nothing fancy. Nothing elaborate. Just a tree. Now, pause and think about that for a moment. These are men who are struggling, who have families to feed, who are terrified they might lose their jobs tomorrow. And they spend money on a Christmas tree. Why? Because it's often in the hardest moments that hope matters most. We need beauty. We need tradition. We need something that says, we're still here. We're still celebrating. We haven't given up. The workers decorated that first Rockefeller tree with what they had on hand. Handmade paper garlands, probably made by their wives or children. Strings of cranberries, and tin cans, yes, tin cans, positioned to catch and reflect the winter sunlight. It was humble. It was makeshift. It was beautiful. There's a photograph from that day. The workers lining up beside the tree to receive their paychecks. Their faces serious, tired, but determined. The tree standing there in the muddy construction pit, decorated with hope. This is where the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree tradition began. Not with corporate planning, not with public relations, with working men who needed something to believe in during the hardest of times. It wasn't until 1933 that Rockefeller Center decided to make the tree an official annual tradition, to add a lighting ceremony, to turn it into the spectacle we know today. But that first tree, that 1931 tree, that was pure. That was real. That was the Christmas tree doing what it has always done, providing light and community and hope when the world feels dark. And now, let's talk about what that tree has become. Because the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree is no longer humble. It's a phenomenon, a destination, an icon. Let me share some details that will help you understand just how extraordinary this tradition has become. Every year the tree is different. It's not a permanent structure. It's a real tree, cut fresh, brought to the city, and set up in Rockefeller Plaza. But finding the right tree, that's a year-round job. There's a person whose official title is head gardener of Rockefeller Center, currently a man named Eric Powes, and his job includes constantly scouting for the one, the perfect tree. He drives through the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, looking, always looking. And when he spots a potential tree, he doesn't just tag it and wait. He visits, annually, for years. He feeds it, waters it, tends it, watching it grow. The relationship between the head gardener and the tree owner becomes almost familial. They plan together. they anticipate together. They know that one day this tree will travel to Manhattan and be seen by millions. When the time finally comes, the tree is carefully cut, loaded onto a custom telescoping trailer, and transported through the narrow streets of New York City. And here's something remarkable. There's actually a height limit. The tree can't be taller than about 100 feet. You might think that's because of the plaza's size, but no. It's because of the streets. Manhattan's streets are narrow. They have sharp turns, and the custom trailer that carries the tree simply can't navigate those turns with anything longer than 100 feet. Physics and urban planning determined the maximum size of America's most famous Christmas tree. Most trees arrive by truck, but not always. In 1998, a tree from Richfield, Ohio, was so special that it was flown in on the world's largest transport plane, the Antonov An-124. In other years, trees have been floated down the Hudson River on barges to avoid traffic. The logistics are extraordinary. The planning is meticulous. The tree is treated like visiting royalty. Once it arrives and is set up, standing on a steel spike within a massive water reservoir base, the tree begins drinking. And drinking. And drinking. In the first few days, that tree can consume up to 90 gallons of water daily. 90 gallons. Just to stay hydrated, to stay green, to stay alive. The tree is wired with over 50,000 LED lights, 5 miles of lights, and since 2007, in a push for sustainability, those lights are powered by solar panels installed on the roof of One Rockefeller Plaza. The tree that started in 1931 with tin cans reflecting sunlight is now powered by that same sun, captured and converted to electricity. And at the top, that star we talked about way back at the beginning, the Swarovski crystal star designed by Daniel Libeskind, 3 million crystals, 900 pounds, over $1.5 million in value. Now you know the journey that led to that star. The tree stands in Rockefeller Plaza from late November through early January. Millions of people come to see it. They ice skate beneath it. They take photos. They propose marriage in front of it. They bring their children and their grandchildren. It's become a pilgrimage site, a secular sacred space, a place where the Christmas tree's ancient function, providing light and hope in winter, continues in the most modern of settings. And during World War II, even this tradition had to adapt. In 1944 and 1945, the tree was set up, but remained unlit due to wartime blackout regulations. Can you imagine that? The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree standing in the plaza, dark, silent, no lights twinkling, no glow warming the winter night. Instead, they decorated it with modest red, white, and blue, painted wooden stars and globes, patriotic symbols to maintain morale without violating the safety protocols that kept the city safe from potential air raids. Even in darkness, even in wartime, the tree stood, a symbol of persistence, of hope deferred but not abandoned. And when the war ended, the lights came back, brighter than ever. Here's something wonderful that happens after each season ends. Since 2007, every Rockefeller tree is milled into lumber and donated to Habitat for Humanity. The wood from that massive spruce, that tree that stood in Rockefeller Plaza, that was seen by millions, that was photographed and filmed and broadcast around the world, becomes part of a home. Framing, flooring, cabinetry. The tree that brought joy to millions gives shelter to a family who needs it. And those families are told about the special wood in their walls. They know that their home contains pieces of the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree, that the lumber supporting their roof once stood in the most famous plaza in the world. From Depression-era tin cans to Habitat for Humanity homes. The arc of the Rockefeller tree's story is the arc of the Christmas tree itself, always adapting, always finding new ways to serve, always giving. And here's a delightful detail. Sometimes the tree brings unexpected guests. In 2020, workers setting up the tree discovered a tiny saw-whet owl hiding inside the branches. They named him Rocky. He'd hitched a ride all the way from upstate New York, nestled in the dense spruce branches. Rocky was rescued, rehabilitated, and released back into the wild. But his story captured hearts around the world. And years before that, a chipmunk was found living in the branches after a tree arrived in the city. These massive spruces are so dense, so forest-like, that they can literally contain entire ecosystems. The Rockefeller tree isn't just a decoration. It's a living piece of the forest, brought temporarily to the city, carrying with it the wildness and wonder of nature. One more fascinating detail. While almost all Rockefeller trees come from the United States, mostly New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, the 1966 tree was different. It was a gift from Canada. A spruce donated by the Petawawa Forest Preserve to honor the centennial of Canada's Confederation. It was the first and only time the tree came from outside the United States. A gesture of friendship between nations. A reminder that the Christmas tree, while deeply embedded in American culture, is still part of a larger international tradition. Now, let's shift gears. Let's talk about a very different kind of tree. One we've also touched on before, but now we'll explore more deeply. It's the 1950s, post-war America. The economy is booming. Technology is advancing at an incredible rate. The space age has arrived. Sputnik, rockets, dreams of the moon. And American culture becomes obsessed with the future, with sleek, shiny, new. Enter the aluminum Christmas tree. Artificial trees had existed before, since the 1930s actually. There were brush trees made by the Addis Brush Company, literally using toilet brush manufacturing machinery to create something that vaguely resembled a Christmas tree. But the aluminum tree was different. This was a statement. This was the future. In 1958, the Aluminum Specialty Company of Manitowoc, Wisconsin, introduced the Evergleam. Picture it, a tree made entirely of aluminum, branches of shimmering silver foil. Some versions came in pink, in gold, in colors that had never existed in nature. They were dazzlingly modern, futuristic. They looked like something from a science fiction movie. But there was a problem. You couldn't put electric lights on them. The aluminum conducted electricity, creating a serious risk of short-circuiting and electrocution. So instead, these trees were illuminated by a rotating color wheel, a device placed on the floor that projected changing colors onto the silver branches. The tree would shift from red to blue to green to gold, creating a constantly changing display. It was space-age Christmas. Christmas reimagined for the modern era. Christmas that rejected the natural and embraced the synthetic. And Americans loved it. For a few years, aluminum trees were everywhere. They were fashionable. They were trendy. They represented progress and prosperity. The Christmas tree had been electrified by Edison's innovations. Now it was being completely reimagined by the atomic age. But then something happened. Something we discussed way back at the very beginning of our journey. 1965. A Thursday evening. CBS broadcasts a new animated special. A Charlie Brown Christmas. Now, let's talk about the making of this special, because it's almost as remarkable as the story it tells. When the CBS executives first screened the finished product, they hated it. They thought the jazz music was too weird. The pacing was too slow. The lack of a laugh track was a fatal mistake. They told the producers, "We'll play it once and that's all. It's going to fail." The special broke every rule of children's television in 1965. It used real children as voice actors, not trained adult actors doing children's voices like most cartoons. Some of these kids were so young they couldn't read the script. So the director, Bill Melendez, had to feed them lines one by one. The result was choppy, innocent, unrehearsed. Completely unlike the polished voice acting audiences we're used to. It featured a jazz soundtrack by the Vince Guaraldi Trio. Jazz. In a children's cartoon, unheard of. Cartoons used orchestral scores or silly sound effects, but not jazz. That song, Linus and Lucy, it had actually been written years earlier for an unreleased documentary. But it fit the special so perfectly, it became the theme for the entire Peanuts franchise. And there was no laugh track. Charles Schulz absolutely refused. He argued that the audience didn't need to be told when something was funny. The network fought him on this. But Schulz stood firm. The special was written in one frantic afternoon. When Coca-Cola, the sponsor, called asking for a Christmas special, producer Lee Mendelson lied and said he already had an outline. Then he frantically called Charles Schulz, and the two of them sketched out the entire concept in a single day. The budget was tiny, $76,000, about $750,000 in today's money. The production schedule was rushed, only 6 months from concept to broadcast. As a result, the animation is full of errors that were never fixed. Characters' heads disappear for a frame. Colors change on clothing randomly. Linus's blanket defies physics. But Schulz and Melendez decided these rough edges fit the shabby aesthetic of Charlie Brown's world. They left them in. And because Coca-Cola was the sponsor, the original 1965 broadcast actually included animation, where the Peanuts characters interacted with the product. In the opening credits, Linus originally crashed into a Coca-Cola sign. That's why in modern versions, you see him fly off screen with no visible landing. They edited out the Coca-Cola reference. These commercial integrations were later cut for future broadcasts, but they were there at the beginning, a reminder that even this heartfelt special about rejecting commercialism was itself a commercial product. The irony isn't lost on us. And then there's the famous scene, the one that changed everything. The network was nervous about including actual scripture. This was commercial television, but Schultz insisted. This was the meaning of Christmas. This was what it was about. And in that scene, Linus drops his security blanket. Right at the moment, he says, "Fear not." It wasn't an accident. It wasn't an animation error. Charles Schultz specifically instructed the animators, Linus drops the blanket at "Fear not." The symbolism is beautiful. Faith removes fear. The Christmas message removes the need for earthly anxieties and security. Linus doesn't need his blanket when he's proclaiming the gospel. Let's talk about Snoopy for a moment. That distinctive voice, the barking, the laughing, the crying. That's actually director Bill Melendez. He couldn't find a voice actor who could make the dog sounds he wanted, so he did it himself. Barked into a microphone, then sped up the recording to give it that high-pitched, energetic quality. And he ended up voicing Snoopy for decades. Every Peanuts special, every movie, all Snoopy, all the time. Sometimes the best solutions are the simplest ones. The animation errors we mentioned, they weren't just tolerated, they were embraced. The budget was so small, the schedule so tight, that there was no time or money to fix mistakes. So you can see characters' heads missing for a frame, socks changing colors. These rough edges became part of the charm. Schultz and Melendez realized that perfection wasn't the point. The message was the point. And these imperfections actually enhanced the message. Charlie Brown's world is shabby, imperfect, real. Just like that scraggly little tree. And speaking of the tree, Charlie Brown goes to the Christmas tree lot with Linus, and all the trees are artificial, shiny, aluminum and plastic, pink ones, green ones, modern ones. The other kids mock them. Get the big, shiny aluminum tree, Charlie Brown. Maybe we can still win the decoration contest. But Charlie Brown sees one tree that's different. A small, real tree. Scraggly. Pathetic, really. Just a few branches and a bent trunk. "I think it needs me," Charlie Brown says. He chooses the real tree, the living tree, the imperfect tree. And when his friends see how sad he is because the tree looks so pathetic, they decorate it, they gather around it, they sing, and the scrawny tree becomes beautiful through love and community. The aluminum tree in the special is depicted as hollow and cold. When tapped, it makes a clanking sound. It's artificial. It's empty. It represents everything that Christmas shouldn't be: commercial, manufactured, soulless. Charles Schultz hated the commercialization of Christmas, and this special was his protest. His declaration that Christmas was about something deeper, something real, something alive. This scene was a direct visual protest against the aluminum tree craze. Schultz was making a theological point about life versus artificiality, and it resonated deeply with 1960s audiences who were beginning to question materialism and embrace more authentic values. The special aired on December 9, 1965, and it captured 50% of the U.S. television audience that night. 50%. Half of America watching the same thing, and America agreed with Charlie Brown. The impact was immediate and dramatic. Sales of aluminum Christmas trees plummeted almost overnight. The aluminum specialty company tried to hold on, but within 2 years, they stopped production entirely. The industry collapsed. People wanted real trees again, or if they wanted artificial trees, they wanted ones that looked real, that felt real, that maintained some connection to the living evergreen. The Charlie Brown effect, historians call it. One 25-minute television special changed consumer behavior and killed an entire industry. It proved that mass media could shape holiday traditions, that television had the power to influence culture on a massive scale. But more than that, it proved something else. People wanted authenticity. They wanted meaning. They wanted Christmas to be about something more than shiny, modern convenience. They wanted what Charlie Brown's tree represented: life, imperfection, love, community, faith. The special ended the laugh track era for serious animated programs. It proved that children's television could be thoughtful, slow-paced, genuinely moving. It demonstrated that audiences could handle silence, could handle scripture, could handle messages that weren't dumbed down or sanitized. And it became a tradition itself. A Charlie Brown Christmas has aired every year since 1965. Multiple generations have grown up watching it. The jazz soundtrack is now inseparable from Christmas. The image of that little tree and the lesson it teaches has become part of our collective cultural memory. Charles Schulz did what the Christmas tree has always done. He reminded people of what really matters. Not the shiny exterior, not the commercial packaging, but the life inside, the meaning, the connection to something real and enduring. Now, we've traveled so far together, from Lauscha's cottage workshops to Corning's factories, from Depression-era workers to Charlie Brown's television special. The Christmas tree has been with us through all of it, adapting, changing, but always serving the same essential function: bringing light into darkness, creating community, offering hope. The tree that started as a pagan symbol of life persisting through winter became a Christian symbol of eternal life through Christ. It became a domestic decoration, a commercial product, an electric spectacle, a space-age novelty. And then, when we went too far into artificiality, it pulled us back to authenticity. The Christmas tree is a mirror. It reflects who we are, what we value, what we need. In 1931, we needed hope during the Depression, so workers pooled their money for a tree decorated with tin cans. In the 1950s, we needed to believe in progress and the future, so we made trees out of aluminum. In 1965, we needed to be reminded of what's real and meaningful, so Charlie Brown chose a living tree. And today, what do we need? What does the Christmas tree mean to us now? That's for you to decide. When you put up your tree this year, whether it's real or artificial, traditional or unconventional, expensive or modest, you're participating in a tradition that stretches back thousands of years. You're connecting to Romans who brought evergreen boughs into their homes during Saturnalia. You're connecting to Saint Boniface, who pointed to a fir tree and said, "This can be holy." You're connecting to glass blowers in Lauscha, who worked in cottage workshops to create beauty. You're connecting to Charlie Brown, who chose the real over the artificial. You're connecting to all of it, every layer, every transformation, every meaning. The Christmas tree endures. It adapts. It survives. It survived the conversion from paganism to Christianity. It survived the Reformation. It survived wars and depressions and cultural shifts. It survived industrialization and commercialization. It survived aluminum and came back to its roots. And it will continue. Long after we're gone, people will still be bringing evergreen trees into their homes in December, still decorating them, still gathering around them, still finding meaning in the simple act of making something green and beautiful glow in the darkness of winter. And so our journey ends here, at the base of the tree, looking up at the star on top,